Italy has given the world more than most countries could ever dream of. Renaissance art, Roman architecture, the finest cuisine on earth. But tucked behind the culture and the beauty is something else entirely. A group of people who have turned Italian industry, craft, and ambition into some of the most extraordinary personal fortunes in the world. And what makes Italy's billionaires so fascinating is how different they are from the tech titans and hedge fund managers you usually hear about. These are people who built empires out of chocolate, out of fashion, out of cars, and in a couple of truly surprising cases, out of the digital financial revolution that's reshaping the entire global economy as we speak. So today, we're counting down the 10 richest people in Italy, who they are, where their money came from, how they live, and the details about their fortunes that most people never get to hear. Stay with us, because the person sitting at number 1 built a $38 billion empire out of a jar of hazelnut spread, and the story behind it is more remarkable than you'd ever expect. We begin our countdown with a name that most people outside of Italy would be unlikely to recognize, and yet Nicoletta Zampillo's fortune of $6.6 billion is one of the most quietly remarkable on this entire list. Her wealth flows from the luxury eyewear world, specifically from her late husband Leonardo Del Vecchio, who founded Luxottica, the company responsible for making Ray-Ban, Oakley, and the frames behind virtually every designer pair of glasses you can name. When Del Vecchio passed away in 2022, Nicoletta became one of the richest women in the country essentially overnight. There's something almost poetic about the fact that an empire built entirely on how people see the world ended up being inherited by someone who has stayed almost entirely out of the public eye. $6.6 billion. And she carries it with the kind of discretion that money of that magnitude often demands. Did you know? Luxottica produces more than 70 million pairs of glasses every single year and licenses designs from virtually every major luxury brand on the planet. Tied in terms of net worth, but carrying an entirely different kind of recognition, Miuccia Prada comes in at number 9 with $6.6 billion. And the story of how she got there is genuinely unlike any other on this list. Her grandfather Mario Prada founded the brand in 1913 as a leather goods shop in the heart of Milan. But when Miuccia took over in 1978, she didn't simply maintain the legacy. She interrogated it, challenged it, and rebuilt Prada into one of the most intellectually serious fashion houses in the world. Her shows aren't just fashion, they're philosophical statements. What most people don't know is that Miuccia has a PhD in political science, and she trained as a mime artist and theater performer before fashion ever became her focus. That background shows in everything she does. The conceptual rigor, the willingness to make people uncomfortable, the refusal to simply give the audience what they expect. She's 75 years old, still designing, still showing up at Fashion Week, and still making the rest of the industry try to keep up with her. Did you know? Prada remains one of the very few luxury brands still under direct control of its founding family, without the influence of a larger conglomerate. At number 8, with a family fortune of $7.2 billion, Massimiliano Landini Aliotti represents something you don't see often in these kinds of lists, a business legacy measured not just in wealth, but in over a century of continuous family stewardship. She chairs Menarini Group, one of Italy's most important pharmaceutical companies, which was first founded in Naples back in 1886. Her husband Alberto had led the company before his passing, and rather than stepping back, Massimiliano stepped forward. Under her guidance, Menarini has grown into a global operation with a presence in more than 140 countries. She is 82 years old and still actively involved in the company's direction. There's a particular kind of resilience that takes, the kind that quietly earns respect precisely because it never demands it. Did you know? Menarini Group now employs more than 17,000 people worldwide, and its history stretches back longer than most modern countries have existed in their current form. Francesco Gaetano Caltagirone built his fortune in the most literal sense of the word, with $8.2 billion to his name. His wealth traces back to cement and construction, the physical infrastructure of modern Italy. His construction group has been involved in some of the country's most significant building projects over the past several decades. But Caltagirone has never been content to stay in one lane. Over the years, he diversified into real estate, banking, and perhaps most interestingly, media. He controls Il Messaggero, one of Italy's most widely read newspapers, which gives him a kind of influence that goes well beyond what concrete and steel can offer. Power over bricks is one thing. Power over public opinion is something else entirely. At 82, he remains a central figure in Italian business and financial circles, with significant stakes in major institutions including the insurance giant Generali. A man who understood early that the most durable empires are built across multiple pillars, not just one. Did you know? His family group holds meaningful stakes in several of Italy's most important financial institutions, making him one of the most quietly influential figures in the country's economic life. There are some names that don't need much introduction, and Ferrari is certainly one of them. Piero Ferrari, the son of the legendary Enzo Ferrari, comes in at number 6 with a fortune of $9.2 billion, a number tied directly to that iconic prancing horse on every car his father built. Piero owns a 10% stake in Ferrari, which on paper sounds modest until you consider that Ferrari's market valuation exceeds $60 billion. That 10% stake alone is worth billions, and it grows every year as the brand strengthens its grip on the ultra-luxury market. He was born in 1945, and there's something genuinely moving about the fact that he serves as the living bridge between the raw, almost obsessive mechanical genius of Enzo Ferrari and the modern global phenomenon the company has become. He's not just an heir, he's a custodian of one of the most emotionally resonant brands in human history. Did you know? Ferrari consistently operates at some of the highest profit margins in the entire automobile industry, a testament to a business model built on scarcity, desire, and an almost mythological brand identity. And now things begin to get genuinely surprising. At number 5, with an estimated fortune of $9.5 billion, we meet Paolo Ardoino, a name that's become enormously significant in the world of digital finance, even if it hasn't fully crossed over into mainstream conversation yet. Paolo is the CEO of Tether, the company behind USDT, which is the world's most widely used stablecoin. If you're not familiar with how stablecoins work, think of USDT as a digital dollar, a cryptocurrency designed to maintain a consistent value, and one that has become the backbone of enormous amounts of global crypto trading. On any given day, Tether processes more transaction volume than Visa and MasterCard combined. He's Italian-born, built his career through the blockchain world, and now sits at the center of one of the most powerful and scrutinized companies in global finance. Tether has faced congressional investigations, regulatory pressure, and persistent questions about its reserves. Paolo has navigated all of it and emerged with nearly $10 billion to show for it. Whatever you think of crypto, the numbers are impossible to ignore. Did you know? Tether's USDT stablecoin carries a market cap that exceeds $100 billion, larger than the entire GDP of many sovereign nations. Giorgio Armani, $11.8 billion, 90 years old, and still, by almost any measure, one of the most influential figures in global fashion. The extraordinary thing about Armani's story is where it started. His father worked in transportation. He briefly studied medicine before leaving university. He worked the floor at a department store in Milan, learning the retail business from the ground up. When he finally launched his own label in 1975, he did it with borrowed money and a vision of what elegant simplicity could look like when it was done without compromise. What followed was one of the great brand-building stories of the 20th century. Today, the Armani empire stretches across fashion, hotels, restaurants, and even chocolates. Because when you've built a lifestyle brand of that scale, why wouldn't you also have your own chocolate line? He owns the company outright, with no public shareholders, no board of investors telling him what to do. At 90, on his terms, all the way to the end. Did you know? Armani dressed Richard Gere in the 1980 film American Gigolo, and in doing so effectively introduced the concept of Italian tailoring to an entire generation of American men. We've arrived in the top 3, and number 3 might be the most intriguing figure on this entire list. Giancarlo Devasini has a net worth of $22.4 billion, and the path that took him there is one of the more remarkable professional transformations in modern business history. Devasini is the CFO of Bitfinex, one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges and a central figure at Tether, the same company Paolo Ardoino runs. Together, these two men form the core of a crypto financial empire that sits at the very heart of the global digital asset market. The decisions they make ripple across billions of dollars of transactions every single day. But here's what makes Devasini's story so genuinely fascinating. Before any of this, he was a plastic surgeon. He practiced medicine in Italy before pivoting entirely into technology and eventually into crypto. It's the kind of career trajectory that only becomes legible in retrospect, and even then it barely makes sense. Secretive, rarely photographed, almost never quoted in the press, he is the definition of a billionaire who prefers to operate in the shadows. Did you know? Bitfinex was hacked in 2016, with criminals making off with over $70 million worth of Bitcoin. Much of it was subsequently recovered by United States federal authorities in 2022 in one of the largest cryptocurrency seizures in history, $34.2 billion. And there is a genuinely strong chance that you have never once heard the name Andrea Pignataro. That, in a way, is exactly the point. Pignataro is the founder and CEO of eyewear Group, a company that builds the infrastructure underneath global financial markets, the software that banks, brokers, and trading institutions use to execute and manage transactions worth trillions of dollars every year. eyewear Group is invisible to the average person, but it is absolutely indispensable to the people and institutions that move money at the highest levels of the global economy. He started his career as a derivatives trader, identified an opportunity that almost no one else was focusing on, and spent the next 2 decades quietly acquiring and integrating financial technology companies into a single, dominant enterprise. eyewear Group has absorbed more than 20 firms over the years. Pignataro is 54 years old, barely known outside of specialist financial circles, and sitting on one of the largest fortunes in Europe. This is what it looks like when someone builds serious wealth by solving a problem that most people don't even know exists. Did you know? eyewear Group's software underpins the operations of thousands of financial institutions across more than 50 countries, making it one of the most systemically important technology companies that virtually no one has ever heard of. And here we are, the #1 spot, the richest person in Italy. And the story behind this fortune begins not in a boardroom, not in a trading floor, but in a small Italian pastry shop in the years immediately after the Second World War. Pietro Ferrero, Giovanni's grandfather, invented what would eventually become Nutella in 1946. Cocoa was scarce and expensive in post-war Italy, so Pietro blended ground hazelnuts with what cocoa he could source, creating a smooth, affordable paste that people could spread on bread. What began as an act of resourcefulness in difficult times became one of the most beloved food products in the history of the world. Giovanni Ferrero now leads the empire that grew from that single idea. Under his stewardship, the Ferrero Group has expanded to include Ferrero Rocher, Kinder Surprise, Tic Tac, and following a $2.8 billion acquisition from Nestle in 2018, the Butterfinger and Baby Ruth brands as well. The company remains entirely family-owned. No public shares, no outside investors, no quarterly earnings calls to satisfy. Giovanni himself is extraordinarily private. There are almost no interviews, virtually no public appearances, and no social media presence to speak of. He is worth $38.2 billion and could walk down almost any street in the world without anyone giving him a second glance. And somehow, that restraint feels entirely in keeping with a man who lets the product speak for itself, a product that has been doing so for nearly 80 years. Did you know? The Ferrero Group consumes approximately 25% of the world's entire annual hazelnut harvest. Giovanni Ferrero's personal fortune exceeds the GDP of several sovereign nations. What strikes you, looking at this list in its entirety, is how different these fortunes are from the ones that tend to dominate the headlines. Italy's billionaires didn't mostly come from social media platforms or venture capital rounds. They came from chocolate made in a time of scarcity, from glasses that help people see, from fashion built on 5 decades of refusing to compromise, from financial infrastructure so essential that the system couldn't function without it. Several of these people are in their 80s and still showing up. Several of these companies are still entirely in family hands, decades or even more than a century after they were founded. There's a particular kind of durability to these empires, one that feels distinctly Italian. If this breakdown was interesting to you, we'd love it if you hit the like button and subscribed. We do these deep dives into the wealthiest people in countries all over the world every single week. And drop us a comment below. Which person on this list surprised you the most? For us, it's hard to look past Andrea Pignataro, $34 billion, and most of the world has never heard his name. Until now.